State Farm Insurance can now jack up your rates if you're in California, a minimum of 17% and up to 38%. Let's jump on into it. Here we go.
A major development in California's home insurance crisis. Today, the state's largest insurer got approval to quickly hike rates on more than 1 million homeowners and renters. Consumer investigator 𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗧𝗏 joins us now with the big decision and really what it means for you. Chris.
Good evening.
Yes.
State Farm says it needs an emergency rate hike on people's property insurance by more than 15% because the LA fires depleted the company's cash reserves. Now we have two decisions. First, a decision from an administrative judge who heard the case in Oakland this past month. That judge concluded the proposed rate hike is fundamentally fair, adequate, and reasonable. That put the decision in insurance
reasonable
Ricardo Lara's hands. Within a few hours, Lara signed off on the rate hike. He agreed with the judge. He said in part, "I am balancing all the facts. Protecting all State Farm customers and the integrity of our insurance market is an urgent matter." Lara's spokesman said the commissioner was not available for an interview. On its website, State Farm said, "We thank the commissioner for this approval and look forward to continuing to work with the commissioner and others on a more sustainable insurance market in California." Here's the rate hike breakdown. Average increases of 17% for homeowners, 15% for renters, 38% for some landlords. The
wow.
Now, will other companies'
chunk
rates rise like this? We asked Amy Bach with the San Francisco
Yes.
policyholders that thorny question.
State Farm is a trendsetter, but they've got to, every one of these insurers has to prove their case. If they come in for a rate increase, they've got to show they need it. State Farm showed they needed it. If other insurers feel.
And that is why these rates are going to go up so hard, because you've had years and years and years of California basically holding these prices down. California homeowners pay like 19th in the country in homeowners insurance, actual rates. But now these insurance companies, because they're being forced to with these, big fires and whatnot, they're saying, hey, we need some more money if we're going to keep doing business in your state. So what we're seeing is years and years and years of rates being artificially kept low. These companies are coming to the insurance commissioner and saying, need an emergency rate hike. We're going to see others follow suit. And rates, they're just going to keep going up.
Well, they need it. I'm sure they're going to be coming in.
State Farm will go one more round with the state at a full non-emergency rate hearing later this year, but no experts we talked to expect the state to do an about-face with this rate hike. If the state does do a 180, customers would get refunds, although that is, again, unlikely. 𝗧𝗜𝗠𝗧𝗏, NBC Bay Area News.
So what you've got is a situation where the insurance companies basically have the state over a barrel. Because if they don't get these rate hikes, keep pulling policies out. They're going to stop issuing new policies and they're going to keep pulling policies out. And that was one of the stipulations of this most recent ruling is that, hey, you got to keep doing business in the state. So what we had is last month, we had a hearing with the judge. Judge said, yep, looks reasonable. And now the insurance commissioner said, yep, we'd like State Farm for you to continue insuring however little insurance you're actually doing in the state. We'd like you to continue moving forward with providing policyholders insurance. What you've got is, you've got reality meeting California's desire to protect the consumer. And in the end, now the consumers are going to start paying more quickly. So State Farm can hike California home insurance rates, officials rule. So they had to come in with this big song and dance, the insurance companies, and this is just State Farm. Every one of these other companies has to go through the same song and dance. And that is why rates artificially have been held low in California. And that's why these insurers are saying, hey, we're out of here. Unless we get some increases, our ability to offset some of these costs of like the wildfires, we're pulling out. We're out. We're done. And they've already said that. That's why they pulled out of so many policies just prior to the wildfires. And that was timing because, nobody has a crystal ball other than, hey, wildfire season isn't quite here yet. But, and here we are. After nearly a year of back and forth, State Farm General. So you got State Farm General and then you've got State Farm Auto. will move ahead with raising rates for homeowners by an average of 17% starting next month after securing the approval of a judge and insurance commissioner, Ricardo Lara. That is California's system of how they do this. And it's such an onerous system that insurance companies have said, screw it. We're just going to keep charging the same rates instead of going through this song and dance to get our rates increased. And that's how we got here. And now they're saying we're basically insolvent, so we'd like to get a rate increase. It's not just owners of single-family homes who are affected. California condo owners and renters with State Farm will see prices rise by an average of 15%, and rental homes go up as much as 38%. All the increases will take effect at the next renewal date following June 1st. As part of the agreement, State Farm will not drop additional large numbers of customers at once through at least the end of 2025. And we've got another hearing, I believe, in October. And that's what they were saying. Well, if the state, turns around and says, nope, we're not doing that, then the consumer would get a refund. But there is no way in hell that is happening. Just not happening. Because, the insurance companies are essentially saying, hey, we don't have the premiums to support all of this, need an emergency rate hike, and yeah, they're granting it. The increase represents a fundamentally fair, adequate, and necessary measure. We heard that, effectively functioning as a rescue mission to stabilize State Farm's financial condition while safeguarding policyholders. Well, how about all the policyholders who have already had their policies cut? What about that? Yeah, there's that. And, for all the other expenses that Californians pay, it's kind of interesting that insurance has been actually fairly affordable if you can get it. But it's if you can get it, it's that little component of this piece of the puzzle that is really freaking people out, because I've been doing podcasts of people buying new homes and essentially not being able to get insurance, having to go on the California FAIR plan, which is really expensive. It's a state-run program, really expensive insurance for minimal coverage. Nobody wants that. They want to be able to get a policy for their home from a State Farm, Farmers Insurance, whomever, Allstate, Friends of the Family. Friends of the Family. What's that one insurance company? Drives me batty. What do they say? Empathy is our best policy. Oh, I just feel so good when they say that. Who is that? Amica or some damn thing? Empathy is our best policy. How often when you call in for an insurance claim, or calling about your rate hike, or calling about your, discontinued insurance, canceled, do you get empathy? I am really sorry to hear about your problems. Let's see what we can do to work this out. Let's smooth this over. Doesn't happen, does it? His ruling, which comes 5 weeks after a 3-day hearing in Oakland and 10 months after State Farm first submitted a request for a rate hike, was published Tuesday morning. But it isn't the end of the saga for State Farm or for any other of these companies who hasn't gone through this massive song and dance that is supposedly protecting the consumer in California, but it's leaving them without insurance. So it's like, all right, yeah, we're really protected until we got canceled. California Department of Insurance still plans to hold a full evidentiary hearing over the increase, where State Farm will be asked again to prove it can justify its need to increase prices for consumers. That's 3 hearings over the course of, a year and something? I mean, no wonder these insurance companies aren't eager to go through this process. And they're just like, you know what? We're making money in other states that have less risk. Let's go ahead and let's issue new policies there. California, we're just going to basically cut you guys off and we're not going to be issuing new policies. It's just what we're doing because California has made it such a pain in the ass for these insurance companies to get even a small little raise in rates. They just got to go through this big song and dance. That hearing, which will be in October at the earliest, will allow for an even more testimony and evidence, including more developed data on State Farm's financial losses from the LA area wildfires. If a judge then concludes that the rate hikes weren't justified, State Farm will be asked to refund customers with interest. If you're an insurance company, and I am in no way, shape, or form representing the insurance company, I get insurance just like you guys, and I get screwed by insurance companies just like you guys. It's like, oh yeah, we don't cover that in our policy. Good. That's great. That's swell. But this is business. And the reason that California is having such a difficult time is because the state has put so many onerous layers of nonsense on getting basically rate increases. And they haven't done, arguably what other states have done to mitigate risk, like, clearing out brush for wildfires, things like that, allowing folks to build basically in areas that are known wildfire areas. And I'll be good. Well, reality hits when insurance companies say, nope, we're not renewing your policy. And nope, neighbor next door, we're not giving you a new policy. We're just not doing that at all. Now, we are hearing stories. I covered a story. I think it was last week. Who cares, right? You can look it up. Covered a story last week where it was basically a duplex, some kind of duplex structure, side-by-side structures. You had the garage down the middle, zero lot line kind of deal, or maybe a condo. I don't know. But the one neighbor could get insurance and the other neighbor couldn't. They were denied by the same company. And you're like, okay, well, it's not exactly the hazardous risk area now, is it? No. It's just they don't want to do business in California because of this kind of protocol they have to go through to just basically do business in the state. So State Farm's most recent request is played out in a highly unusual way. California is one of a dozen states where insurance companies must get state approval before they change their rates. That approval process can take months or even over a year. And that is what we're seeing. And this is an emergency request. This is an emergency request. But this is the first time in nearly a decade that a rate hike request has resulted in a public hearing. It's also an extremely rare case in which regulators will allow an insurer to begin raising rates before they've made a final decision because they know it's warranted. You just had a massive, massive wildfire and you've got billions and billions of dollars of damage and stuff to take care of and just absolute cluster. So the odds are that State Farm is going to have to pay out heavy are already high. We already know what basically they're paying out. And what they're saying here is that with more time, we'll have further indications of State Farm. And I haven't seen anywhere along the line that somebody said, you know what? I don't think State Farm has a case. I don't think any of these insurers have a case to raise rates in California. Haven't heard that one bit. What I have seen is that folks are complaining that 𝗨𝗨, the California insurance commissioner, he's in bed with the insurance companies. He's too close to executives in the insurance business. They're just colluding against the consumer in California, and that's what all of this stuff is set up to protect. And in the end, it backfires, and that's how you end up with a 38% increase on your rental property insurance. That's nuts. That's a big, big rate hike. That's a massive rate hike. But State Farm and the Department of Insurance both said that the unconventional process was necessary to address the company's rapidly deteriorating finances, made worse by the LA wildfires. State Farm's newly approved rate hike is just about half of what the company originally asked regulators to approve last June. The insurance initial filing requested a 30% rate hike for homeowners. Well, I mean, it's like negotiating in real estate. When you go in, when you take your first shot, you're going to go in high. You're going to get a little haircut. If you're a buyer, you're going to throw out your number low. And if you're a seller, you're not going to come off your number. So that's what the insurance company is doing. Let's do it 30%. Well, we can always bring it down. And that's what they've done. 52% for rental dwellings. 52% for rental dwellings and 36% for condos. Those are some big bumps. Those are big bump numbers. Following the January wildfire in Los Angeles County, the company lowered its request in exchange for expedited approval. All right. So they're cutting a deal. They're cutting a deal. All right. We'll come off from 50. We'll come off from 30 to 17, 52 to 38, 36 to 17 for condos. But you got to put us in the fast track here because solvency is critical. Solvency is critical. State Farm General said it would secure $400 million in funds from its national parent company, State Farm Mutual Auto. So you got auto kicking in $400 million to State Farm General, who's handling basically fire insurance. State Farm Mutual Automobile Insurance Company, a spokesperson for the company, said it will be required to pay back its parent company over time with interest. These are literally different entities, but if State Farm, General has issues, then its sister parent company, whatever you want to call it, basically a parent company, it's responsible in order to keep insurance policies going in the state. Insurance is it's a crazy industry. And I think most of the time the consumers just get bent over and taken to Pound Town, right? That's just how it always feels. So lawyers and financial experts for the department support the request for the final rate hike number, 17%, in the April hearing, but they still face opposition from Consumer Watchdog. Ugh, okay. All right. We will hear from the Eaton Fire Survivors Network. Joy Chen, leader of the Eaton Fire Survivors Network, said she worried that Laura's approval would set a precedent that insurers can shortchange customers and still be approved for higher prices. Well, is that happening? Certainly canceling policies and forcing people to go on the FAIR plan, because you got to have insurance if you've got a mortgage, right? That's just one of those things. Your lender is going to require you to have insurance. His decision sends a chilling message to every Californian. You can pay your premiums, but you can't count on your insurer to be there if disaster strikes. Yeah. So California, rates going up. And you know what? When rates go up in California, they're going to go up everywhere else. And this is we are just talking State Farm. This is just State Farm. Now, State Farm does do, I think, 20% of the insurance business in the state of California, but they are the biggest by percentage of business, and they're the most influential by far. And with the state fair program, California State Fair program, basically insolvent, there's a lot of pressure on these private companies to kind of keep the ball rolling and keep things going, because people are basically stating, I don't really want the fair plan because it's super expensive and I don't get the coverage that I'd get in the private sector. But my private sector company dumped me, even though I'm 10 miles away from a fire hazard area. So you got a lot of policies here that are kind of coming to the surface, and a lot of it has to do with trying to protect the consumer and these policies backfiring, like so many other policies in California right now backfiring. I'm literally to the point where I'm like, maybe we should change this to, take a dump on California news for reasonable people. You know what I mean? So many stories are coming out of California right now because you've got policy meeting reality. And this is what happens. You've got a cluster on your hands. You've got a literal cluster F. And it'll be wild to see how this turns out. What if you have another equal, I'd hate to say it, wildfire? What if you have a big earthquake? Talk about stress test. I'm going to see what that stress test looks like. We're seeing it right now and it's not looking good. Thanks for being here. That's it for me on this one. Love to have you subscribe, do all that good stuff. I'll see you on the next podcast. Bye for now.